Alright, I've got a little bit of work to do. I need the finished product here on the length of this pipe, including this male adapter, to be between 3 7/8 and 4 inches for this particular fixture. So I've opted to go 3 15/16 to split the difference. So I need to cut this off, clean it up, double check it, and then we'll get this thing soldered on. Okay, well I'm all prepared here, got it cut to length. I was trying to hit in the middle of their range. I hit dead on 4 inches, which is the high end, so that'll work just fine. It's very important to ream these pipes out as well as make them super clean and bright before you solder them. My cutters have a reamer that folds up here to get in there, and you can twist it around to clean that up. Now on pipes like this, I just use a piece of emery cloth. It's just faster. Get on there with 2 hands and whip it around. But you can use a tool such as this to get on there. And these are kind of directional. They only want to really turn well one direction. If I try to go the other way, see, it doesn't really want to go that well. But it's also very important to clean the insides of your fittings, which is where these brushes are indispensable. So everything's super nice, bright, and tight right now. I'll be applying some flux on here and sweating this together. Okay, I'm set up here. I've got this fluxed. A little bit inside the fitting, a little bit on the pipe, put them together. You don't need big gobs of flux, just a little will do. Now I use a MAP gas with a turbo torch head, but I have a turbo snake here. And I like this because I can get in tighter places with it in lieu of having to use the bottle. I like burning MAP gas because it burns hotter than propane, and I also silver solder with it. 15% silver solder. So anyway, the general idea here, I've seen some videos of people sweating pipe, and to me they're going about it all wrong. Way too hot. If you get the pipe too hot or burn the torch too hot, the solder will actually flow and bubble and run off, and it won't really flow around and wick up into the joint. Now I can't show this procedure, but I'm going to show the flame that I use just for reference, but I'm going to explain how I sweat pipes personally. Now when I start up the torch and get it to the level that I want, I start with the heat on the pipe itself just to warm it. Not very long, just for a second or two. And then I move the heat over onto the fitting. And these do not get red. You can't even really tell that they're warm. But I strike the solder once it starts to flow on the top of the fitting, and it rolls around the sides. It takes very little to do the job. You keep the heat on the fitting itself to draw that solder in. It will chase that heat. And then once it's finished, but before it's cool, once the solder sets up and hardens, you come in with a wet rag and you wipe the joint down. And that kind of brightens it up and it cleans off the flux, because the flux is corrosive. You do not want to leave it there. Alright, this is the flame that I use. It's a really soft flame. This is perfect for soft soldering. I'm going to turn this up a little bit. That's way too much. Way too much heat for this job. Not like that is all you need. Alright, when the wife quits coughing, I'm going to start talking. Alright, got it soldered on now. Got it wiped off, everything looks good. You know, that flame that I was talking about, that's primarily reserved for like 1/2 inch pipes, maybe 3/4 like this. You know, obviously if you're doing something 1 inch, 1 1/4, 1.5 inches, you know, you may have to use more heat to get all the pipe warmed up. But just for reference, that's what I use here, and it works great. Alright, well I put a bead of caulk around here, and I'll explain why just in a moment. Some Teflon here, and this spout is now ready to screw on. There is this notch in the bottom of the spout. That's so if there's a leak up here at the front, it will go down and run down the wall. However, if whoever roughed in the plumbing didn't have fall out in this direction and it actually kind of ran uphill, if there was a leak down here, it might traverse that pipe and go down behind the wall. So that's just a little extra measure there to ensure that if this does break down, any reason right here, it won't get back into the wall. So now this thing is ready to be installed and hand tightened up. Alright, we're looking good. I've got the backing plate and associated hardware put on here. There was no sense in showing any of that since they're all a bit different. Alright, well, I'm going to turn my attention to installing the shower head and give a little bit of information on doing something like this. Now, this escutcheon plate right here, they're notorious for scratching up finishes. So what I've done is I've pushed it on from the back side where it'll go into the wall, just a little bit shallower than what I think it's going to bottom out at. That way, as I'm putting this in, I can slide this plate forward to give myself a little bit of room, rather than sticking it way up here and then scratching this finish on the way back on. I went ahead and applied my Teflon tape here for the shower head, but if you can see how narrow the bead is right there that I've put on, I did it this way so when I install these two pieces together, you're not going to see a white line coming out at you. And to do that, when I installed the tape, I started on here with my finger and I turn the tape maybe about a 45-degree angle, then I start wrapping it and it makes a narrower bead. Now, Teflon tape, many may not know, is directional depending on your application. So in this instance, if it's screwing into the wall, looking from behind it, I'm going to wrap this tape counterclockwise around there, and the tail is going to come off and lay down here. So when you're screwing it in, it doesn't want to unwind itself. So if you put it on in this fashion, you always wind it with right-handed threads. You always wind it clockwise. So I would wrap it around this way, so when it's turned and installed, that tail will stay put. I'm going to apply a pipe thread compound to the threads here, where it goes into the drop-eared L in the wall. Now, to tighten these up, a non-marring wrench like a pipe wrench should be utilized. I don't have mine here, but I'm going to show you guys a different way to do this, and it works great. Alright, well, I'm installing it now, and hopefully you can see how close this escutcheon is to the wall. I've got a couple turns left to do on this, so as it starts to contact the wall, or just before, I'll pull it back a little bit and I'll go some more. That way I don't scratch up the wall. And then after I get it tight, I'll push it back, and there'll be no marks on the wall and no marks on this finish. Now, I mentioned I don't have a strap wrench to put on this to tighten it up. So what I'm going to do is put one of my hands right here to support it, and then I'll use the handle of my channel locks right in the end here, and I'll wrench it around and tighten it up. Now, you don't want to go too crazy. If you don't think you can get another round on this, stop. If the threads are getting too tight, you cannot back it up. So if you do have to back it up, you need to take it all the way apart, reseal it, and put it back together, or it might leak. So if you go too crazy, you might run a risk of bending this pipe, but being careful and doing like I said, I've never had a problem. Alright guys, the shower head's been installed. No scratches, everything turned out just great. Hopefully now you can see by the way I put on that Teflon tape, I don't have a white line around here bouncing off this oil rub bronze looking like an eyesore. It's still there, it's doing its job, but it's a nice clean installation. Just a little more general information. Well, it's been a lot of work to get from bare walls to this level, and it's almost a shame. All my labor, time, and energy to do this, and I'm never once going to use it. But at least I can enjoy knowing that it works.